Good day. We've got a special fireside chat webinar today. We've got CEO Andrew White of Char Technologies joining us. Char is a clean tech development company specializing in high temperature pyrolysis, converting organic waste into renewable fuels. And our special guest, no offense, Andrew, is Irina Gorbounova, ArcelorMittal's VP of Mergers and Acquisitions and head of ArcelorMittal's Xcarb Innovation Fund. ArcelorMittal is the world's largest steel company and is on the forefront of decarbonizing the global steel industry. It's Wednesday, July the 19th, and I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. And please remember, this is neither a recommendation or investment advice. We're here to learn about these companies and their recent news. Andrew and Irina, thank you very much for taking the time out to join us with your busy schedules. First question for you, Irina. Could you please just give us introduce yourself and give us a brief history and overview of ArcelorMittal and your mandates within the company?
Thank you, Martin, of course. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar. It's really my pleasure, and I'm delighted to be joining this. I think it's quite remarkable times that we are all witnessing, especially when it comes to climate change. And I think the awareness of urgency of the energy transition, I think, is higher than ever, considering the heat waves that are taking place across the globe. But maybe before I get to energy transition, a quick introduction from my side. So I'm Irina Gorbounova. I'm a vice president of mergers and acquisitions at ArcelorMittal, and I'm also the head of Xcarb Innovation Fund. I've been with the group for more than 18 years now, so quite a remarkable journey, seen a lot of really interesting developments, and very much focused and passionate about decarbonization of the steel industry. As Martin correctly stated, we are one of the largest steel-making companies globally with a really, truly global footprint, and we are trying to make sure that we are at the forefront of industry decarbonization journey with the objective to get to net zero by 2050, which is quite ambitious considering the steel industry carbon footprint. Nevertheless, we are very much determined. We as a group developed a number of technology pathways of how we're going to decarbonize our steelmaking operations. And in addition to all of those pathways, what we decided is to launch Xcarb Innovation Fund to support to identify some of the most interesting startups and technologies like Char technology that can support and accelerate our journey to net zero.
All right. Can you discuss your one of the keys to decarbonizing the steel industry are electric arc furnaces, and can you discuss those investments in Canada and within the Xcarb Fund that you manage?
Of course, sounds good. Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, when I talk about technology pathways to get to a zero carbon and low carbon steel, we are talking about a number of, I will speak about three ways. One is DRI based on green hydrogen, so it's directly reduced iron process based on green hydrogen. So that's one way how we can get to produce steel in a most low carbon manner. The second one, what we call smart carbon, where we leverage and utilize carbon capture in the process. And for that, we also need to ensure that we take as much as possible, replace rather the fossil coal in the process with the biocoal or with the biochar, and therefore reducing our CO2 emissions from the steel making. And the third way is direct electrolysis. So that's really electrifying iron ore and producing liquid steel through this method, which is still very early stages in terms of the technology development, but offers quite an interesting potential. So I think with Char, or maybe before I go to Char Technologies, with the funds, we're really looking across the value chain. So we have a global mandate to invest in startup and early phase companies. Regardless of the technology pathway that we're planning to take, clean energy, renewable energy, clean electricity is going to be paramountly important. And that's the reason with the fund, we made a number of investments in the space of clean energy. As I was mentioning, the technology pathway based on green hydrogen, therefore, we did make an investment in hydrogen startup, which is based out of Israel. Given the renewable energy intermittent nature, we are also focused on the energy storage, and therefore we made an investment in a startup developing a seasonal storage and long duration, low cost energy solution. So we have a number of investments with the fund. So I think, Martin, you were asking to explain a little bit more about the fund. So I'm kind of trying to give the perspective that it's really across the whole supply chain, it's across the whole value chain. And because it's not just one solution, we don't think it's going to be some magical one solution to get us there. It's really a complex challenge. And given our global presence, it's, we need to really look at the overall picture in order to identify, which pieces of the puzzle, how we're going to put them together to get to this net zero outcome.
And I don't want to get too deep into this, but could you just very briefly discuss sort of traditional steel making versus electric arc furnace steel making and how that is more green or more manageable on the carbon production side?
Sure. So traditionally, most of the steel globally, this primary steel is produced through blast furnace route. And what it means is we use the blast furnaces, we take iron ore, and to reduce iron ore, we're using coke and coal. At least that's how in the traditional blast furnace route steel is produced. And this is what results in the carbon footprints, because it's really the fossil coal, the coke and coal in the process. The chemistry around this leads to CO2 emissions and carbon footprint. And in order to reduce that, it's really, I think, this simple way, I know I'm simplifying, but I think the way to look at it is how can we take the fossil coal out of the equation? Is there a way not to use coal or either to replace it with the biosources, like in case of what Char Technology is producing using biomass, or is there another way where we don't need the coal, so we can use, for instance, in case of AIF, electrical arc furnace, based on green hydrogen. I mean, there are electrical arc furnace and DRI, where we can then use natural gas and eventually green hydrogen as a redundant of iron ore.
All right, that's great. Thank you for that introduction. And Andrew, now on to you. Can you please give us a brief history of Char Technologies and explain that for electric arc furnaces, where you fit into that puzzle and you help that decarbonization process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, we kind of bowled right over it, but we should also remind those on the call who, didn't read the article in the Globe that the reason we're here is because of the great investment from ArcelorMittal's Xcarb Innovation Fund in Char. So brought $6.6 million investment into the company, and which included an offtake agreement at the Dofasco site, which we're grateful for, we're excited for, and of course appreciate Irina taking the time this morning to talk to investors and help them understand why this is such a great thing for Char and for ArcelorMittal as well. Char, as a company, what we do is a technology called high temperature pyrolysis. So we're taking primarily things like wood residuals. So think like used shipping pallets or the tops of trees when, logging companies go in to harvest, or the offcuts from a sawmill. We heat that up in the absence of oxygen. So zero oxygen environment, the wood cracks apart because it can't burn, there's no oxygen. So it cracks apart into a solid carbon, which we call a biocoal, and a gas stream, which we can then take to things like green hydrogen, renewable natural gas with it. So we are in the process of building our scale-up commercial facility in Thorold, Ontario. We've identified a number of additional project sites. And the timing for our scale-up is really tied well with this shift to electric arc furnace. Because as Irina was saying, in the typical blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace process, there's a tremendous amount of fossil coal that goes into that process. their site here in Hamilton, Ontario, Dofasco, is converting to be a DRI, direct reduced iron electric arc furnace system. And that dramatically reduces the amount of solid carbon that needs to go into the system, but you still need a little bit for the chemistry. But the order of magnitude is now similar to what we're able to produce out of our Thorold facility. So we can actually meet that much smaller carbon demand with biocoal completely based on the scalability of how much biomass is available. So they really work hand in hand to really drive the steel production to net zero or zero carbon emission processes.
Irina, you mentioned that you've made several other investments through your Xcarb Fund. So you're looking throughout the globe for innovative and effective technologies. What made Char as a company and technology stand out from what you've seen out there to justify and make the investment for ArcelorMittal?
That's a great question, Martin. And first of all, I'm quite pleased with the number of applications we have received as part of the accelerator program. So it was, quite a comprehensive and quite interesting process to really look at various proposals in order to shortlist the most interesting candidates, and finally, of course, to choose Char as the winner of the program. And I think the reason and what really stood out, so I think, first of all, there are a number of things, but I think, first of all, for us, technology is paramountly important. We are really after something that can support us in decarbonizing our steelmaking. So it's really a strong technology with a strong business plan that stood out. Secondly, I think worth mentioning is really the management team, because, one thing is technology, but then, do you have a strong, capable management team in place that can drive the technology and really bring it to the necessary maturity, necessary commercialization, and necessary, scaling up. So I think that's definitely something that stood out in case of Char. So compliments to Andrew and the management team. Then, of course, we are looking from the strategic perspective, and therefore, for us, the target application of the biochar in electrical arc furnace, it's an important solution. It's really very strategic and important solution for decarbonization of our operations. And therefore, we also, in addition to the investment, we have entered into the offtake agreement for the biochar. What Andrew was saying, in order to feed the biochar in our operations and satisfy some of our requirements of biochar in Hamilton, ArcelorMittal, Dofasco. And then another thing that stood out, and that's based on also what Andrew described, is really the flexibility to produce biochar and renewable natural gas. So I think this is another important element that made Char special.
And you've been acquiring and using Char's product on a smaller scale to test it out for the last while to facilitate this. So is it fair to say you feel fairly confident that the technology works and this is a solution that will help, that will fuel your Hamilton plant, given you've made the investment and taken the offtake agreement?
Char has been working with our facility in Canada for a number of years, carrying out various tests. So I think we're still, of course, going through the initial phases, but it made us fairly comfortable that this is a very good solution for us, and we do believe it's going to be scalable. Of course, the tests will continue, still early stages, but we do believe that we'll be using this product in our facilities in Canada.
All right. There was a Globe and Mail article after the announcement of your investment and the offtake agreement. It quotes you as saying ArcelorMittal typically follows up with more investments. What milestones are you looking for with Char before any of this happens? And what forms of capital could be contemplated in follow-up financings?
Thank you, Martin. Great question. I believe it's important to note that once we make an investment, like I mentioned before, it's really with a strategic perspective. So it's not that we make an investment and we just sit passively and quietly and hope that the company will develop as they aim to develop. What I'm trying to say is that, once we made an investment, we also want to work with the company to ensure that they really scale up and develop in the most optimal way. So it's not just, there are some particular milestones that I want to mention at this stage, but I think, we'll be working together with the company to see how to scale it up and when the capital is needed. We are generally flexible, but it's decided on a case-by-case basis. But, I'll give you an example. For instance, we made an investment I was mentioning before, the energy storage company that we invested in. We actually, Xcarb Innovation Fund, led the round a couple of years ago. And then in the last rounds last year, we did follow up with the investment so that we kept our stake and our shareholding in the company. So in principle, yes, but I believe it's, it's case by case. We are generally flexible, but we will always take a view on, what is required, how we can support the company to help them scale up.
If you don't mind me asking about the Xcarb Fund, you're doing this for commercial means. You're wanting to make money off of these investments, but as well, there are key technology pieces required to decarbonize the steel industry. So you have two motives: A, to solve your business and technology problems, and then presumably to make money off of it throughout the process.
Very well put, Martin. And indeed, I think if you really look at the priorities for us, the primary objective is really it's about the potential of the technology to help us to decarbonize our steelmaking operations. So this is really the primary objective. But of course, we also want to ensure that, it comes with the financial returns to the extent possible. But again, primarily we are looking from the strategic perspective. And I know there are lots of course, venture capital funds in the space, which would say for them, it's really about the financial returns and return on the investment. It is important, but strategic reason is really primary reason.
Gotcha. At 10,000 tons per year, it looks like biocarbon offtake with Char is maybe only a small portion of ArcelorMittal's Dofasco needs. How much biocarbon supply would ArcelorMittal eventually like to see for the Dofasco facility and maybe its other Canadian operations as well, or even globally?
Yeah, I think, it's not, I'm not going to start putting any specific numbers now. I think what I would like to say is that biocarbon could have a huge role to play in the decarbonization of steel making. But, we need to really take one step at a time. We don't want to run when we are only really just learning to crawl. So we'll go through our process, we'll test and validate the material. We'll do things progressively and professionally. And, once we are 100% confident, we will be scaling up. Focus is now on Canada, given Char's location, but if it works there is no reason why this model cannot be replicated at other ArcelorMittal facilities globally.
Out of Char's pyrolysis machine, sort of the headline product is the biocoal, but it also produces, I don't know if it's a byproduct or core material of it, it produces syngas, green hydrogen, or renewable natural gas comes from Char's technology as well. Is there potential or the ability for ArcelorMittal to use those products from Char's pyrolysis machines as well?
And I think the simple answer is yes. But of course, we're primarily focused on the really on the biochar now. But I don't see why, we couldn't potentially use syngas and hydrogen. But this is something, of course, we will need to take up further with our technical team and our operational team. But in principle, potentially, it can be an option.
All right, Irina, thanks for that. I'm going to switch some questions here to Andrew. From your shareholders' point of view, what does a strategic partnership mean with ArcelorMittal?
Yeah, and I think there's really three elements of this investment and partnership that we like to highlight and that really make a difference for Char. Obviously, bringing working capital into the company, it's great to have that financial investment, but getting that financial investment, I think, really validates the amount of work we've done with ArcelorMittal Dofasco and the Canadian operations to test and demonstrate the biocoal. the sort of due diligence work that Irina and her team undertook to really demonstrate that the technology works and makes sense, that the business plan works and makes sense. And then, of course, the offtake agreement is always a paramount element of getting project level financing. And as we've previously talked about, we want to finance our projects at the project level. We don't necessarily want to be going out to the market and having to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to build all these facilities. Having offtake associated with it, again, gives that validation, that confidence, but also, shows that the facility itself as an entity can operate and can be revenue generating and can be, give a positive return to investors.
All right. Is the partnership with ArcelorMittal, is that exclusive? Can you supply bio-coal from your pyrolysis to any other steel companies?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is it's not. I mean, obviously, we're ecstatic to have such a great partner, and we're going to continue to work collaboratively with ArcelorMittal. But, we have a demonstration scale kiln. So, can we produce different types of biocarbon? Can we look at producing product to go into other industrial processes, other metal smelting, cement, that type of thing, even more advanced biocarbons? Absolutely. There's no restrictions on this investment that would limit us from, exploring market opportunities. But, obviously we're quite ecstatic to keep working with our friends with this partnership.
The key demand with the steel industry would be the bio-coal, but the methane and renewable natural gas and hydrogen is a key output from your process as well. Would there be a possibility to do partnerships with, let's say, a major gas utility for your renewable gas output as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a huge need and demand for renewable natural gas, in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, as everyone is looking for pathways to decarbonize. And as we talked about, our facilities have a co-product model, so we're always producing the gas stream and we're always producing the biocarbon stream. So we are looking to have that gas offtake agreement as well. And then what form that takes, we're certainly open to exploring with the gas utilities here in Canada at the moment.
We've got a question here asking about the capacity of one of your units. And I guess I just want to expand that a bit. Would Char build like a giant pyrolysis machine somewhere, or is it a more modular, smaller system where you could scale up in your Thorold facility or other parts of the world and build out your facilities that are strategically located both to feedstock as well as where the customers need it?
Yeah, well, as Irina mentioned right at the beginning, the heat waves that are going on kind of presents a level of urgency to get technology moving and moving quickly. And our view is that a modular approach achieves that goal. So modularity allows you to factory build our kilns and deploy them in the field as opposed to building sort of one giant plant. But it also allows us to match the feedstock availability. So, biomass by its nature is distributed. There's a certain scale where it just becomes cost prohibitive to bring more biomass to a central location. So will our modules get bigger? I think the answer is yes. But there's a kind of a ceiling on how big you can go. And by building the facilities in a factory or the equipment in a factory and then just assembling on site, you really reduce the risk around budget. You really reduce the risk around project timelines, and you're able to deploy these things quickly so they can start having an effect at decarbonizing, in the near term as opposed to 5, 8, 10, 15 years from now.
All right. We are running short on time here, so I guess it's time for some closing comments. Irina, any final comments from you or any points you'd like to highlight out or any points that we missed from our conversation here?
We covered most of the points that we wanted to cover. I think the final remark is really, we are, in a very urgent situation when it comes to addressing the climate change effects, as we are all witnessing now. So I think it's really around, bringing more awareness and supporting those companies that are helping us to address it, in the most expedient manner. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do with Xcarb Innovation Fund. And we're doing it both through investing in those companies, helping them with their plans, and also actually helping them to deploy and work with the industries in order to address our respective challenges to get to net zero.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Irina, for taking the time to chat with us. And Andrew, any final comments or points to highlight or mention before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, obviously, the partnership and this deal has been, is fantastic for us. But I think the other thing it really demonstrates is the commitment from large, heavy industry players like ArcelorMittal to make an effect on climate change, to really reduce their GHG emissions. And, we're thrilled to be able to play a part in helping move down that pathway to create green steel and low carbon steel.
All right. Andrew, Irina, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to meet with us and share this information. Have a great day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, the audience.
Bye.